Let's talk about students today. I'm going to use the term students' rights, but by rights I don't mean human rights or civil rights or legal rights. Rights is just a quick way of specifying what a student can properly expect to be granted him or be available to him. The rights a student has will flow from the academic mission of the university and those values and practices necessary or useful to that mission. The mission, of course, is to be a place at which people who value intellectual and moral autonomy can gather to think hard about difficult matters. For a student, then, the rights that he or she has or should have at a university are embodied in just those procedures, institutions, and freedoms that are necessary for one or both of these two things. The first is acquiring the skills and understandings of an intellectual, and the second is living as an aspiring intellectual within a community of intellectuals. So whatever rights a student has, they are rights that the student has because they serve one or the other of these two things. Now, students' rights should be backed up by safeguards and procedures set by the university. Safeguards include the university's concern that members of the university community know the rights that students have, that all members, not just the students, but everyone knows what rights students have, and why they have these rights. Procedures include those that the student may use when complaining when they believe that their rights have been violated or under threat, and those by which complaints are heard and fairly evaluated, and those by which complaints with merit will find their remedy. Rights, we're often told, and not just in the context of student rights at a university, but rights generally we're told come with responsibilities. I'm not sure that's true, at least if the thought is that a person who uses a right irresponsibly may with justice be deprived of that right. So if I have a right to say what I want, then if we have a right to say what we want, then we have a right to say what we want even though we speak irresponsibly. Anyone who cautions that your possessing or exercising a right is contingent on your exercising that right responsibly doesn't understand the concept of a right. He or she has confused rights with privileges. Nonetheless, students do have responsibilities, even if not all of them flow from rights. The responsibilities that a student has come in two sorts: those that the student may violate without earning penalties, and those that students will suffer penalties for if they violate. So among one of the sorts of responsibilities is the responsibility to pay tuition and fees. If you shirk this responsibility, then you're out on the street, you're no longer a student. Another is the responsibility to drop a course by the drop date or accept without fuss a failing grade. On the other hand, the other sorts of responsibilities are responsibilities that students may violate without incurring penalties. So for instance, the responsibility to attend your classes. There's no penalty for not doing so, other than not doing well in the course, and there's a responsibility you have to read carefully the course material. But again, if you don't do so, there's no specific penalty assigned. You merely won't do well in the course. So, what rights then does a student possess? Any short list of rights will include these. One is the right to pursue any program that she is qualified, according to academic criteria alone, to pursue. That is, the right to pursue a course of study if you merit inclusion in that course of study by virtue of academic criteria. Students also have the right to be taught well. If a professor is not discharging his responsibilities to teach well, then that professor should be talked to, first by the students and then maybe by others if things don't get better. Students have the right to have their work evaluated on academic grounds alone and to be evaluated soundly on those grounds. They have a right to hear from their professor why he criticized or evaluated the work as he did. A student might receive a score on a piece of work, but that student has the right to ask the professor why that score and why not another. And the professor has the responsibility to engage the student in discussion on that matter if the student wishes. The right to have adequate and comfortable study space and to have adequate and comfortable classrooms. The right to express herself freely, both inside and outside the classroom. And this includes the right to speak ill of her university, to speak ill of her teachers, and even to speak ill of her classmates. Students, I believe, have the right to associate with ever whom they wish. They have the right to form campus clubs or campus societies and to receive university funds or resources for the clubs and societies according to a fair scheme of disbursements. A right to invite visiting speakers to campus. And again, the right is not a privilege. You don't get material resources except as they are fairly dispersed. You can't demand that someone come speak on campus and the university pay for it. But if you have the ability to bring someone to campus and you wish to do so, then you have a right to do so just as everyone else. The right to attend classes and campus free from disruption. The right to due process in any academic or non-academic disciplinary matter. The right to speak to the professor critically about any aspect of the course, that is topics, materials, means of evaluation, teaching style, classroom management, accommodations for disabilities, and you have a right to receive a response. Now, by saying it's a right again, I mean that there can be no penalty assigned for doing so. On the other hand, a student has no right to choose to ignore any aspect of the course without academic penalty, and no right to force any changes in the content or delivery of courses. That is, if you choose to opt out of some segment of the course for whatever reasons, religious, your emotional sensibilities, whatever, you have no right to for the professor not to grade you on those on that topic. Now, one institution within a university, a formal institution that safeguards student rights, is the grade appeal process. All universities, I believe, should have in place a mechanism by which students who think their final grade does not accurately reflect the quality of their work may seek to have that grade changed. A typical grade appeal mechanism is to have a standing committee of 3 professors who take submissions from the student and from the professor to determine the academically accurate grade. Students would engage the appeals process, though, only after consulting with the professor. Should the student, after discussing the matter with the professor, continue to think that her work did not receive the grade that accurately reflects its quality, she can ask independent evaluators to appraise her work. The grade appeal process helps to ensure that professors assign grades based solely on the quality of student work, given the professor's standards, of course. That a professor doesn't like a particular student should not affect that professor's evaluation of the student's work. The availability of a grade appeal process reassures the student that she may say what she wants, dress as she wants, associate with whom she wants, whatever the professor thinks about it. That a professor doesn't like a student must not matter in how the professor evaluates that student's work, and the availability of a grade appeal process ensures that students receive grades that reflect accurately the quality of their work. Now, money and resources are always tight at a university as well as anywhere else, but maybe more so at universities than many other places. But that means that how much of any particular thing a student may properly expect is limited by other academic needs and rights, all in the context of the university's material situation. What makes an expectation a right is that it is to be considered important along with all the other academically sound expectations. Student rights are being violated not because students have to sit on old creaking chairs, for instance, but because students have to sit on old creaking chairs when professors or administrators don't have to. Fairness is a matter of equal consideration of all academically sound expectations. 2 rights can, of course, conflict with each other in particular contexts. One student's right to speak his mind might conceivably compromise another student's right to attend a class free of disruption. Such conflicts between student rights are actually very, very rare. When someone disrupts a class or other event, the disruption typically involves the volume, the manner, or the length of time that the person has chosen to use to express himself, not the content of his expression. The disruption, then, can be handled without compromising the disruptive student's expression rights. Students' rights, I've said, often need formal institutional protection. A grade appeal procedure was my example. But students' rights overall are best safeguarded by a university's informal institutional culture. Culture over structure almost always. When administrators and professors are keen to respect students' rights out of their dedication to creating and maintaining a community of intellectuals, these rights are not at risk at all. When concerns other than creating and maintaining a community of intellectuals motivate administrators and professors, though, students' rights, along with academic freedom and the teaching and research missions of the university, can easily come to grief.